It is July 3rd, 2024. And of course, all kinds of things are going on in the world as always. So let's see what some of these things are. And then we'll bring our panel in and see what they've got to say about a number of these world issues, including the whole situation around immunity and all along those lines. But first, it looks like Hurricane Beryl is heading toward Jamaica. Apparently, Jamaica is bracing for Hurricane Beryl as Grenada was left with unimaginable damage. So that is something else that is going on as that's definitely is a Category 4 storm as it's heading toward Jamaica and all along those lines. So hopefully the folks over there in Jamaica are bracing for that storm and getting ready for it and all along those lines. And the far right majority can be avoided, according to the French Prime Minister. So definitely the French Prime Minister says efforts to prevent a far right majority can succeed. And apparently economists are worrying about the fiscal plans of Macron's arrival. So that's something else that's going on in the news, because there are elections that are impacting the world that are taking place all over the world economies and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have to say about that as well, including a area that I know that Shaquille is very familiar with, that being the UK, because apparently the world's most successful political party is staring at a sweeping defeat in the UK election. So the Britain Conservatives, some people are saying, face extension on Thursday. That's according to the Washington Post. Don't know that I'm really to go that far, but we'll see if Shaquille, who has a lot more knowledge than I do, is willing to say that as well. But it looks like there is no doubt that it's going to overhaul British politics. So they're saying definitely that the UK Conservative Party faces a potential wipeout. And in Sierra Leone, a child marriage ban is welcome as President Julius Maada Bio signs that into law. So apparently there's going to change some of the rules around child marriages in that African nations. And Palestinians are fleeing Khan Younis as Israel says 1.9 million are crammed in central Gaza. So thousands are seeking shelter as the Khan Younis exodus continues, and Israel has ordered new evacuations in southern Gaza, prompting the transfer of hospital patients. So definitely that is something else that is going on with that Middle Eastern conflict as well. So definitely there's a lot of things going on in the world, including Hungary's Orban pushing a ceasefire in a surprise Ukraine visit. So definitely the U.S. Department of State has commented on Orban's ceasefire proposal, but definitely we'll see whether that is something that is agreed to or not agreed to, because apparently Ukraine is playing both sides to save itself, is what some folks are saying, including the fine folks over there at Politico, that publication, and all along those lines. And one was killed, another wounded in a suspected terrorist stabbing at the Carmel Mall. So that's something else that is going on in northern Israel. And that is definitely something that I know will probably be talked about as well. So definitely, if you're wondering to know who's going to be the likely prime minister in London, it looks like it might be the Labour candidate, who is Keir Starmer. So definitely it looks like that is who will be the new person that will be ruling that part of the world. So we'll see how that impacts the world economy and the world in general. And Turkey closes its Syrian border after violence flares in both countries. So with fists and knives, mobs attacked Syrian refugees in Turkey. So definitely there were anti-Syrian riots that were spreading in Turkey, and that was after an anti-migrant riot. And Taiwan says China seizes a fishing boat near its coast. So China seizes that Taiwanese fishing boat as tensions are rising in that part of the world as well. So there may be another conflict going with the ones that we already have and all in that space. Um, Definitely, it looks like looks like Belarus is to join the so-called anti-NATO SCO. So it looks like this is a group that I guess is going to be a counter to NATO and all along those lines. And it looks like it's a group led by Xi over there in China and Putin. So definitely we'll see what other groups might be joining that as well. So definitely that's some of the things that are going on the international scene. Let's go to the U.S. and then I'll bring in my panel and see what they've got to say about a number of these stories as well. So from unanimity to fear mongering, it looks like a lot of folks are wondering about the Supreme Court ruling and all in that space. So apparently, following that, there was a move to actually push the hush money trial verdict till September. So that happened after that ruling. So instead of the date on July 11th, which would have been a week from tomorrow, it'll now be sometime in September. Who knows? It might even be around the time of the second debate. So we'll see if that is the case. But I do know that I was actually watching some other news outlets as well that they have pushed that now to September. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. So definitely it'll be interesting to see how that goes out. And Joe Biden's lead is wiped out in a critical battleground state. So looks like as Biden is plummeting in leaked Democratic polo memo, according to some political folks and all in that way. So Biden campaign is send all staff memo seeking to calm fears about his candidacy. So definitely we'll see whether this all plays out or not. And New Mexico is denying a film incentive application on Rust movie after that fatal shooting by Alex Baldwin. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what's going on in the world of filmmaking as well. So definitely folks are even predicting, because coming back to Politico, Democratic lawyers are saying, get ready. If Trump wins, there will be chaos. So there's definitely talk of chaos with a Trump victory. Now, whether that's the case or not the case, only time will tell. First, he's got to win. And then if he wins, we've got to see what kind of chaos may be out there as well. And it looks like Joe Biden has had a meeting with Kamala Harris and Governors Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker. So definitely, it looks like that is something that is going on as the Biden team is scrambling to contain the first Democratic defections and all along those lines. And like I said, Gavin Newsom traveled to Washington to stand with Biden amid calls for him to step down. So definitely, like I said, I think later on today, there's supposed to be that meeting with the Democratic governors and all in that kind of space. And it looks like the Thompson fire has burned homes and forced 13,000 evacuations in Butte County and all in that kind of space. So that's in Northern California. And it looks like that raging wildfire has forced that many people to evacuate, as there is definitely that going on with climate change and with other things that might be impacting it as well, because the North California heat wave is definitely out there. And I think here in North Carolina, we had a little bit of a brief reprieve, but the temperature is supposed to climb back up into the high 90s and feel like 100s starting today. And I think going through the 4th of July weekend and going all the way into next weekend as well. So definitely get ready to brace yourself. If you live in the Southeast, it looks like some more of that hot weather is coming our way, and we'll see how this impacts things. Also, just in terms of being prepared, I know a lot of people are being asked to make sure that they have water and are definitely prepared to deal with the heat. And Omaha Latino organization reacted to a Crete shooting. So it looks like a white Nebraska man shot and wounded 7 Guatemalan immigrant neighbors. So that is something else that is going on as well. And apparently that those immigrants had had a run-in with the neighbor who had shot them previously. So definitely, I'm sure that this will bring up some conversations around immigration and everything as well. And Gavin Newsom has dropped his Proposition 47 measure and he left in order to back Biden, but he pulled his own crime ballot measure because that was a measure that he had as well. So it looks like this was going to be a interesting measure, and we'll see if Rick's got some ideas around that and what the impact will be as well. And a woman was killed in a robbery gone wrong at an upscale Newport Beach mall, according to authorities in that area of LA. So a suspect allegedly ran over a 69-year-old tourist after robbing her outside of that particular Newport Beach mall. So that is definitely something that is else going on as well. And there's a number of people, including some that might be considered political prisoners. And one of those, because I actually know somebody that used to work on his case and all along those lines, but Indigenous activist Leonard Peltier was denied parole for the 1975 killing of two FBI agents. So Stevie Van Zandt says, I deeply respect the FBI. It's in that spirit that I say that they're getting this very wrong. So he was definitely somebody that was, I think, trying to support this particular activist, but he was denied once again for that role in the 1975 killing. So this is after he had served nearly 50 years in prison. And like I mentioned yesterday, Biden has proposed a new rule to protect 36 million workers from extreme heat. So the feds push new heat protection for workers while Arizona steps up its own safety measures. But this will be interesting as well. And the Supreme Court declined to review the Illinois assault weapons ban, leaving it in place. So the Supreme Court declines to hear a series of challenges to laws barring felons and drug users from having guns. And Clarence Thomas pushed the dangerous definition of what an assault weapon is. But it looks like that will still be out there. And I guess some of these people can still get these type of weapons, at least for now. And Biden will be bestowing the Medal of Honor on two Civil War heroes who helped hijack a train back in the day and everything along those lines. So definitely Civil War pirates who stole a train to wreck rebel infrastructure will be receiving the Medal of Honor. So he's going to be giving them the Medal of Honor, of course, posthumously and all along those lines. So like I said, there's a number of things going on in the news. I know that Nick in the past has talked about the Chevron case, and I've definitely heard people talking about that, as well as some of the ways that the Supreme Court decided not to go into the whole conversation around moderation of the internet and all along those lines. So definitely there were some interesting decisions and all in that kind of space. And if you're wondering about that missing Flagstaff woman there in Arizona, the husband has been arrested amid the search for the missing Arizona woman, and they are saying that she may be the victim of homicide. So definitely it looks like that is, I guess, which way the case is going at this particular moment and all in that kind of way. And, in one of those cases that might give you memories of OJ and everything, a driver of a stolen hospital van led police on a pursuit in the San Fernando Valley. So definitely it looks like it ended in Panorama City, but they did go all on a long chase and all in that space. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what goes on in that way. And a man got 20 years in a child sex case over there in Florida. The Florida Keys sales boat was a floating house of horrors for children, according to cops. And the man got 20 years for distributing child pornography. So that's, like I said, a lot of things going on in the world. And like I said about the other case where the folks got 7.5 years for fraud, 20 years for child pornography might be a little bit low as well. But who knows? We'll see what our folks have to say about that also. But I'm going to bring in Rick, bring in Shaquille, and also bring in Jacoby. And who knows, Nick may join us as well. But like I said, a lot of things going on in the world. And of course, a lot of people are paying attention to what the impact of immunity will be. And like I said, that does seem like a low amount for that amount of situations with the child pornography along those lines.
Look, 20 years. I don't know enough about the case, but if the accused or the now convicted person was producing the stuff, then I think that 20 years is not enough. How many children's lives has he ruined? There should be a life sentence or something like that. It should be. I don't think 20 years is enough, but that's my personal view. Unfortunately, 20 years is actually quite a high sentence if you compare it to Europe and Australia, etc. So, as for the immunity stuff, I was actually saying yesterday that I didn't have on the surface much of a problem with that, because I think that there's qualified immunity for police officers and for people who work for executive agencies and enforcement agencies, etc. But then immediately, pretty much the same with abortion, right? Republicans have spun this that, hey, we're just trying to send it back to the states. It's perfectly reasonable that people get a say. And then immediately afterwards, Lindsey Graham decides to try to put in a nationwide abortion ban. If you believe it should go to the states, then let the states decide. Don't make it federal. So immediately after saying that this should only be for official acts, Donald Trump has tried to use that as a ruling to have his New York convictions overturned. Now, again, I personally don't think that there's much of a legal basis for the convictions in New York. However, presidential immunity shouldn't be something being used to overturn it. If you've got a problem with this, if you think that the law was applied incorrectly, then talk about that at state law and then take that case specifically up to the Supreme Court if you want to. But don't just say one thing and do another. And Republicans, I think, do that a lot. I'm not in any way letting the Democrats off the hook for that, but I think Republicans do that a lot, and they need to be careful because they're going to piss a lot of people off. I'll be right back.
In that same regards and everything, this is for everybody, including Rick may have some thoughts, and Jacoby and Nick wants to jump in since he is one of the lawyers of the bunch and everything along those lines. What is our thoughts about this notion of the Supreme Court declining to review the Illinois assault weapons ban? Because even here in Durham, North Carolina, we've had a lot of problems with guns and the violence, and sometimes it's mostly, from my understanding, pistols and not the heavy kind of weapons, but there are felons that have these kind of weapons, and they have declined to hear a series of challenges to laws barring felons and drug owners from having these guns.
So the Supreme Court is saying we're okay that you have those laws. So
they're not saying that. They're just saying they're not going to review it.
Right.
Okay. I mean, isn't that saying they're... Oh.
Well, no, because you can't then cite the fact that they didn't review it last time and then say that's case law, right? They just didn't take it, which is a problem with the Supreme Court in the US, is that they only take like 2% of the cases or something that's referred to them. So
the U.S. since the 1930s, since gangster times, fully auto machine guns, Tommy guns, the ones that go, those have been illegal. And it's only the most lunatic gun rights people who think those things should be made legal again after nearly a century. And it wasn't until in 1966 there were zero AK-47 type assault weapons in private hands. Now there are millions. It was a weapon that was developed for use as the M16 in the Vietnam War, and then the civilian equivalent is the AR-15. And we got along fine without, a ton of them.
But Rick, I think it's a little bit unfair. Look, I come from a country that has pretty restrictive gun laws. We didn't used to. I think it's a little bit unfair to say that the only people that want these things to be legal are, lunatics. I've had the pleasure.
I said only the people who want Tommy guns, the machine guns from the 1930s.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I've had the pleasure of being able to be in ranges in other countries that actually use those guns, and they're a lot of fun. Now, would I recommend that everybody should be able to have access to them and have them in their house? No, probably not. Like, I'm not sure that's a good idea, but having a blanket law against using them or having them, look, they can be a lot of fun. You sit there and shoot them, and a few seconds later, you've got all these bullets that have hit the target or not hit the target. In my case, let's not say that everything that people do is just because they're a lunatic.
So, well, okay, I'm basing it on like statistics and Twitter, where there are a zillion people saying, let us have our AR-15s, our AK-47s, for fun, like you said, or because we have packs of feral hogs roaming the state of Texas and Florida. And A lot of people argue for those. And I see that all over Twitter. I don't think those people are lunatics. I don't agree with them, but there's a ton of people. But I've only seen like a couple people ever, out of the.
I'm not sure how you would go about trying to get rid of a pack of feral hogs using an AR-15. I mean, you'd want to have a longer range. That seems like a silly argument, but yeah, I get what you're saying. And look, I think the US. I've said this a lot. We see all the time. We see some of your mass shootings, especially school shootings, and the most recent one being the Uvalde one. Those kids were between 9 and 12 years old. I can't even imagine how heartbreaking that would be for parents. But you also have a Second Amendment. So what do you guys do? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to that. But it's a problem, and it's something the US needs to deal with. And I think there's a number of issues like that where I think people need to get out of their silos in your country and actually have some real conversations about real options. Because one of the things that I pick up on in the US is people will often say, well, we've got these common sense rules. Common sense proposals, and then the other side says, well, they're not so common sense because it's going to have this effect, and then it just becomes, a partisan fight instead of there being real conversation about things that can be done. I don't think it would be healthy for the United States to adopt the positions that Australia has on this. We had one mass shooting and we all lost our guns, but it was a big shooting though. But yeah, I mean, you maybe should consider having a look at some of the rules in the European Union. You're muted, Jacoby, but if you want to come in.
Yeah, Toby, you want to jump in?
Just to point out, the Australian shooting, which you guys lost. You can say you lost your minds, but I think you actually brought in a lot of common sense. You really haven't had a mass shooting since. We have a mass shooting roughly every day, multiple in some of the days, because we don't do anything. Guns have become more of a religion and a culture around guns. So it's tougher for us to do things because people fear so much about what goes on about guns. For example, background checks. Simple universal background checks are hard to push through because people think it's a quote unquote slippery slope. What Rick was talking about, the Tommy guns, no, it's not just crazy people that want it. People also think that, oh, well, if you ban any gun, then you're going to take my guns away. That's a problem mentally and culturally in our country, more so than, because they're talking about, hey, let's have some common sense discussion. It's hard to have common sense discussion until one extreme position begins to loosen up, because we can empathize and understand and rationalize so many things. But when you're just talking about, okay, well, we just want to put in common sense gun laws because that deters, that has been statistically shown to stop criminals from getting guns. But then the comeback to that from the other side is always, no, you're just trying to take my gun away, and that's going to create, because you're going to create a database and you're going to take all this stuff. So
I think you're absolutely correct. I think you're absolutely correct. And there's a point to be said that a lot of these looser gun rules in Southern Republican states are allowing guns to go up into Democrat areas.
Let me finish real quick. But there are some common sense gun laws, and we should be focused on those common sense gun laws. It's just the extremist positions that are deterring us from that. And those extremist positions begin to dominate the conversation. And that's our problem.
Hey, speaking of that and everything,
I wanted to respond to it. I think you're correct, especially when people suggest that Republican states, especially the southern states that have more relaxed gun laws, are the ones that actually allow the guns to be bought and sold in their states, and then those guns go up to more Democrat-run areas and are a cause of gun crime. I mean, that's a reasonable accusation. But when people just say it's common sense gun laws, look, there are some gun laws that I've heard proposed that I've gone, oh, I'm not sure if I would agree with that. Now, I'm not an advocate of gun laws. As I said, I live in a country that doesn't have, actually all three of the countries that I routinely live in don't have the ability to get guns very easily. And the fourth country being Switzerland, obviously it's a lot easier there. I do just want to point out, though, you have a Second Amendment that says the right of the people to own and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I think that those people that look at it solely based on what that Second Amendment says, it's one thing to say they're being extremists, but they're going to feel like you're taking something away from them. And again, I'm not advocating that position, Jacoby. I'm just saying that that's what's been expressed.
I understand the position that you're trying to express. And even when you're expressing that the purist, when you're saying the extremist position, which is expressed that, it shall not be touched. According to SCOTUS, and it was the Heller case, it only protects handguns. That was that Washington, D.C. case. That's the only gun that is technically protected up under SCOTUS. And then that is what was discussed about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, when it's being discussed, as you notice, the right to be infringed, it shall not be. You forgot to mention the well-regulated militia piece. That well-regulated militia isn't just anybody running out into getting any gun whatsoever. So if we're going to have that common sense discussion, the extremist positions, like I said, they are there and they are expressed, and that's what dominates the conversation. What we're actual common sense discussions and laws, like background checks.
Just really quickly, along those same lines, because I did not realize this until I was reading one of the other articles, but apparently the guns that Rick had alluded to and everything, the semi-automatic guns are apparently, such as the AR-15, are among the most popular weapons in the nation. Like I said, every time I hear
they sell a ton of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I was wondering, because I did not realize how popular they were, because apparently Justice Clarence Thomas, and some people have different opinions around his legal thoughts and everything, but he appeared keen to uproot further future bans, urging the court to take up another such case on the basis that some semi-automatic guns are among the most popular weapons in the nation, therefore claiming that more guidance is needed which weapons are dangerous and unusual. So he further called out the Seventh Circuit's decision to uphold the state ban, which stemmed from the landmark 2008 decision that ruled that military M16 rifles are not protected under the Second Amendment, and he actually called that nonsensical. So he said the Seventh Circuit's contrived non-militaristic limitation on the arms protected by the Second Amendment seems unmoored from both text and history.
Mark, I think we've got the gist of it. Can we let Mark let Rick respond?
Let me correct what I said earlier. Fully automatic machine guns are not entirely illegal. It's perfectly legal to own a Tommy gun, a Thompson machine gun, if it was made and registered before 1986. So they weren't banned 100 years ago. They were only partially banned in 1986. That starting in 86, you couldn't buy a new one. You could only trade the old ones. So you can have a fully auto. You can go, you can spray as much as you want, but it'll cost you $12,000 because they're fairly rare.
So our worst actual mass shooting was the one in Las Vegas, which the guy took, actually, I think it was the bump stock, and actually created turned his semi-automatic rifle into a automatic rifle, which shot from a long distance from a hotel and shot up a group of concert goers. That was the worst mass shooting that happened under Trump. Trump then, because of the outrage that happened, and was finally Bennett, close the door. Was finally convinced to ban bump stocks, and bump stocks are now okay based on the actual ruling by the Supreme Court, which just came out, which overturned the actual executive order that Trump put in place based around bump stocks, which created a lot of outrage. And what you're talking about, Rick, the assault rifles ban, which was then reversed back in, I think it was 20. What was it? 20.
I think it expired.
It expired, and they didn't re-up it because the Republican Party didn't want to re-up it. Ever since then, there have been more mass shootings. It has continually increased. And because we're talking about those, again, getting back, I hate to use the term common sense gun laws because everybody determines what common sense is in their own mind. But those gun laws that protect against bump stocks, we don't need bump stocks. Yes, they talk about bump stocks are necessary for those and with special needs or wheelchairs and so on and so forth. Well, it turns a gun to an automatic rifle. Then on top of that, when you're talking about the ghost guns, nobody's banning ghost guns right now. We need laws around ghost guns. People have 3D printers. I have a freaking 3D printer. People using 3D printers to create guns that are with the ability to actually pieces to turn their semi-automatic rifles into assault rifles. So all these things we have to truthfully look into, because we're in a new day and age, and we keep treating it as if we got to worry about I hate to bring up the Tommy gun again, that we're fearful of the Tommy gun. Well, ghost guns are scary.
Along those same lines, I'm wondering what the gun conversation is how it's going to pivot with the immigrant discussion as well. Because I did mention earlier that there was a case in Nebraska where apparently several immigrants were shot after they had a run-in with their neighbor. And you know that we don't always, we should hopefully love our neighbors, but it doesn't always happen that way and everything. And sometimes your neighbors may irritate you. And I don't know what the conflict was, but apparently they had several conflicts or run-ins prior.
Yeah, but how is that even allowed? How is that even allowed to happen? I mean, if these immigrants have been shot at by their neighbours or by a neighbour, right, and this has happened multiple occasions. I mean, surely there should be something done about that. You can't go around shooting people or shooting at people.
Shaq, and
I mean, you remember the people that did that. I believe they were Trump supporters that drove in a rally. I think it was in Georgia, and really intimidated that children's birthday party. They some of them got like 20 years for having done that. And now you've got somebody shooting at people and his next door neighbours, and he's allowed to do that more than once. That's really a one-time only thing. You do that, your guns are taken away from you, and you're in serious trouble, I would imagine.
Shaq, what we agree on there is what should have happened. Sadly, welcome to America. That is the American way. Sad, but our reality is that. Yes, the gun situation is a sad reality. People have actually shot at other people, but use the excuse of, I was fearful of my life. That's the Castle Doctrine. The Castle Doctrine has led to many deaths, especially when it got stated.
Yeah, but if somebody makes the argument it was self-defense, then what are you going to do? But shall we move on, because we've spent half the show now? We're the halfway mark. We spent half the show. Move on.
Well, I want to bring up that today is July 3rd, and as we all know, tomorrow is July 4th, the United States celebration of independence from the King of Europe. Right? Our forefathers fought for that when we came here, and we fought hard for our independence from a king. And I just find it ironic that in the same week we find out we're still serving a king. So anyway, for some reason, the rockets that were red blaring last night just have no meaning to me anymore. But we are supposed to be celebrating our independence from a king. So don't forget to go out and shoot the rockets and enjoy, and maybe we will find freedom one day.
Kim,
that's my opinion for the day.
But perhaps, Kimberly, you can shoot some of those red rockets at England, because I can tell you, and I'm actually one of the very few people that are not on the left in Australian politics and New Zealand politics, or Canadian politics for that matter, who believes that we should be a republic. I don't get it. I do not understand. I actually think that my technical home, I actually think that my technical home country of Great Britain should become a republic as well. I don't understand why, even if it's only symbolic, the right to veto Parliament should be somebody's birthright. Surely that person should be in some way appointed either by a parliamentary process or voted on by the people. It shouldn't be someone's birthright. I just find it so offensive. The idea that if you run for Australian politics, for example, and you're running on, you're running as a Republican, you want to bring the Australian Republic idea to a referendum. Before you do so, you have to swear an allegiance to the Queen or the King now. before you're even allowed into the parliament. I mean, it's so offensive and insulting. You know, when I was in cadets, we were asked to, to swear an allegiance to the Queen, and it was, Queen and then country. It was God, Queen, and country. And I was like, no. Well, what do you mean God, Queen, country? I'm supposed to prioritize the Queen over the whole country? I'm not doing that. So I refused to swear it, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't kick me out of the cadets. But besides the point, I just find that to be really offensive. So no matter how many problems America has, no matter how many problems you guys have, at least you do have, in some way, the right to self-determine what your future is going to be, as opposed to that being an external third-party country that determines it for you.
I feel like that's stripped from us. But when I look at the American Republic was founded on a set of beliefs that were tested during the Revolutionary War. Among them was the idea that all people are created equal, whether European, Native American, or African American, and that these people have the fundamental rights such as liberty, free speech, freedom of religion, and due process of law, and freedom of assembly. And I just feel like that, with what just happened recently, where they're forcing our schools, our public schools, to put in someone's religious beliefs posted all over their walls, has taken everything that we said we stood for and fought for. It's just all a false prophecy of our country.
I totally understand where you're coming from, Kimberly, but I just would like to make that point again. However those issues are resolved, whether they be resolved through your court system, whether they be resolved in the ballot box, however they're resolved, at least they are going to be resolved for better or for worse within your own country. You don't have to be subservient to another country, and least of all, you don't have to be subservient to one family because they have birthright sovereignty over your nation. Which is why I have such a problem
right now with the Trumps or maybe Hiltons.
I know you guys don't like Trump, but that's not the same thing.
We can argue Trump, we can argue Bush, we can argue a number of families. But Shaquille, I did have a quick question for you. Hold on a second, because you did mention the fact.
Go to Rick, and then Jatovi, then come back to me with your question.
All right. So I'm pissed at George III, the British king, who was actually mentally ill, who he in Parliament screwed up the relationship between the colonies and Great Britain. And so we broke away and became this country that is now having severe problems. Canada didn't break away, and it is so much less crazy than we are. Also, Great Britain got rid of slavery 56 years before we did. If George III hadn't been just literally insane, maybe America now wouldn't be as crazy as we are.
Well, I mean, have a look at other Commonwealth countries. I mean, it's an unfair comparison because this is the reason why I think. Sorry, let me just say this. This is the reason why I think people in America get very off-put by me sometimes, right? Because most people won't say anything. You guys do live in one of the best countries on earth. Okay, I won't say you're the best because obviously I am more in love with my own countries than yours, but you guys live in one of the best countries that's ever existed. And for all of your flaws and for all of the horrible things that have happened in your history, you guys have it pretty good. Okay, what you guys tend to do is you tend to focus so much on the negative things that divide you rather than focusing on the really good things about your country. And I think that ends up giving people in America a very distorted view of each other. And I think that that's really sad. I don't think you guys need to be as divided as you are. And least of all, about politics. People have different opinions on things, but it shouldn't mean that they're your enemy. Unfortunately, it's become very divided. And absolutely, it's become very divided since Trump first came on the scene in 2015, 2016. But it's something that you guys need to get past because you're a wonderful country and that internal bickering affects your relationships overseas.
But Shaquille, hold on a second, because Kim actually made a misstatement earlier, and it's part of the divide that you're talking about and everything. Because let's be very clear and everything. When the Constitution was written and when those kind of like declarations were made, Indians and African Americans were not actually in that conversation until later.
No, of course. Absolutely correct, Mark. Those aristocrats. those aristocrats that were the founding fathers of America that actually had the audacity to say that all men are created equal whilst having slaves. Like, all men are created equal, but about those slaves, well, I'm not sure about them. And almost every one of the founding fathers had slaves. The reality is, I think that a lot of the reasons why there is a level of racism in the United States, specifically and almost exclusively that affects, in some ways, it affects the African-American community, is because your country was not designed for you. It was designed for other groups to get ahead. And you guys are still battling with that. Now, I don't know exactly what the solutions are. I don't know exactly what the solutions are to that. But there are some programs that you guys would try to use that I don't think work very well. But clearly there's an issue, and it does go right back to the foundation of your country. But I would still suggest that your country is one of the greatest countries on earth, and you should just don't beat up on your own country, right? You guys are okay. Toby, go for it.
Sodom and Gomorrah to happen. Go ahead, Mark. What else? I mean, I agree with you. I was reading what they had put up
you
about
agree
the
with what was put out there and everything, but I was just going to make that. And I was just wondering, because I brought it up earlier, but what is our thoughts about somebody that has been in prison? Some people will say he's a political
Let's go to Joby first, Mike.
Joby's had his hand, his arm's going to fall off.
Yeah. We'll let Jatovi. Yeah, go ahead, Jatovi. And then we need to talk about what Mark's bringing up about the person in prison right now.
Well, I would like to talk about the elections in France and the UK, because the UK elections tomorrow.
We can talk about that in the political show on Thursday night. Go ahead.
But it's tomorrow. This is the last show before the election.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about it in a minute. Go ahead, Jatovi.
Okay, just to touch on what everybody was just talking about. Yes, the country was founded on the backs of slaves, on the back of the African American community. I disagree that it wasn't.
And the Native American Indians.
Yes, and the Native American Indians. Well, actually, it was
the blood of the Native American Indians.
Exactly, because it was built on the backs of the African Americans, but yet the Native American blood was spilled and strung all throughout the whole country. So
we'll
it wasn't built on their backs, it was built on their blood and their graves, which is sad. Right. So the separation, yes, the divide happened then. In terms of us ever dealing with that, we've never dealt with that. We've tried to, but there's always been that section of society, the same group that started out wanting to secede from the nation, which was what brought about the Civil War. And then those individuals then bringing in all the Jim Crow stuff, all the Confederate monuments, trying to keep that alive, the Sisters of the Confederacy, all that divide has kept us going. Then with the civil rights movement, then you had the Southern strategy, which shifted those same extreme racist individuals into political power, whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole divide there that's never been dealt with. And until we deal with that divide is always going to be there. In terms of us talking about the country, you should be able to criticize your country if you want to improve it. If you continually say, oh, wow, this is such a great country. Okay, yeah, we know the freedoms here and there are much more freedoms than many other countries, yes. But many other countries also have freedoms. And then when we see things being taken away and things being struck down, like women's rights that have been there forever, when those are taken away, we should be able to criticize and say, hey, that's a problem. When we see the voting rights being taken away and merged, taken away from the strength of the Black vote being taken away in particular cities and particular states, we should be able to criticize and say particular things to improve the nation. That is what improvement is. You learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. If you look at any basketball player, Michael Jordan considered the best basketball player on the planet, yet he lost a lot and learned from those losses. The best baseball player strikes out more than he actually hits the ball.
I think we got your point, Toby.
Those things we should be able to criticize and improve ourselves on. And then bringing it all back to what Kim had brought up, talking about our forefathers and us escaping this and so on and so forth. This is where that criticism comes from, because going into July 4th, we are now on the precipice of an election with one individual who is legitimately trying to take rights away with his policies through this Project 2025 situation. And then he is legitimately calling the individuals that took a Confederate battle flag into the Capitol for the first time it has ever been in the U.S. Capitol. He is calling those individuals patriots and heroes. So we are at a point where we're trying to celebrate our Independence Day tomorrow,
Right.
while trying to elect an individual who's trying to take us back years, because he's already taken women's rights back years. He's already taken some African American rights back years. And so we have to legitimately, as Kim was trying to point out earlier, really think about our independence as we move forward and really talk about, yes, the freedoms that we have, we're about to start losing because of what is going on and what is happening in our society. And it's okay to be critical of that. That's where discussion happens. And that's where, honestly, we move forward through discussion and not sitting here saying, well, we should only talk about, hey, the good things.
Well, that's true and everything.
Well,
But
and
just
I
really quickly,
agree
hold on a second.
with that. And I think that we need to take into consideration that, neither candidate is worthy of being a president right now. And what we need to do is get smarter for our future and our children's future and get two candidates there that we can all unite under and respect. But right now, I get it. I understand why the Trump people don't respect Biden, because they see him as weak, even though he's not. He's smart, and he walks funny because he has arthritis. I mean, I have a spinal disease, and if y'all saw me without my shots, you would make fun of me, just like you make fun of Biden. Not you, Jatovi, but some people. But I want to listen to Mark about the person in prison right now, because I want to hear about what's going on.
Linda Cotier we can get to later and everything, but I did want to hear from, because that's actually the other thing that I was going to go to, because I do not know that much about the UK and France as much as I should and everything. And I know that Shaquille has ties to both of those countries. So I was actually curious as to what we can expect on these elections, because it is a world edition and they are both, as Shaquille just mentioned, coming up on tomorrow and everything. So Shaquille, what can we expect from these elections?
I think the French, just like the rest of the European Union stuff, is going to go significantly towards the right. The Tories, or Conservatives, if you'd like to call it that, are going to be absolutely annihilated. And again, for the record, I've never voted for the Labor Party in the UK. I've never voted for the Labor Party in Australia, and I've never voted for the Labor Party in New Zealand. So the Tories, or the Conservatives in the UK, are my party, and they deserve to be absolutely crushed. And I hope that they're absolutely crushed. And I say that because I think that they have done an abysmal job since they've been in power. They've navigated us through Brexit terribly. They've ignored the plight of the working class, who relied on them and gave them their votes for the very first time in history. I think that they've just done an appalling job, and they deserve to be crushed. Now, I'm not going to say they'll advocate or support Labor's positions on a number of issues. But hey, I think it's time for them to take the reins for a little while, and the Tories should spend the next 3 or 4 years working out how to regain the trust of the electorate. So there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to be crushed. I think the wild card in this election is going to be just how much support the UK or UKIP is going to get, which is Nigel Farage's party. And the poll numbers would seem to indicate that he could actually end up being the official opposition. So that'll be very interesting. Nigel Farage has never actually been able to get a position in Parliament. He was able, obviously, to get European Union Parliament positions, but he was never able to get it in the UK, and he has run a few times. But I think this particular situation is going to be a bit different. I think that he is essentially going to appeal to a base who wouldn't ordinarily have voted Tories, but did so because they were unhappy about other issues. And I think that he's going to get that base. I think it's just going to be very, very careful in the UK that they don't allow themselves to become too radicalised or too, a bit like the MAGA guys in the US. Nigel Farage and Donald Trump are friends. So not everything that they do.
I see Steve
last sentence. Not everything they do is bad, but there has to be feedback to them when they're going a little bit too far.
I see Steve's joined us, and I got a question for him and for everybody else. Do we
Yes.
think the world, England accepted because the Tories have sucked, do we think the world is drifting into fascism the way the world did that in the 1920s and 30s?
I don't think we're drifting into fascism. I think that what's happened is that the centre left has for the last probably 30 years has made some pretty good arguments and has had some pretty good policies that have helped a lot of people. And people like myself, people go back 40 and 50 years, people like myself have benefited from things like immigration and more funding for healthcare and education, all those sorts of things. I think that what's happened is the left has gone a little bit too far and has become a little bit out of touch, and that they won't accept the feedback that's been given to them along the way, which I think is a reason why Donald Trump will win this election against Joe Biden. It's because Democrats have refused to listen to any feedback, in my view. I understand that you guys don't agree with that, but that's just my view. It's not because Joe Biden's a good or bad person. It's just because Democrats have refused to listen to feedback.
Yeah.
No, he just froze. And did you freeze? I didn't do anything.
Well, you guys muted me. You guys muted me. Okay, so I did. So I feel that that's where the problems become, and I think if you look at Europe, for example, they've talked for.
Is
he muted?
I don't know.
The host is muting me all the time. The host is muting me. I'm responding to your question. I think in Europe, they've been told for decades what the problems are. They haven't listened. And so they've got no other alternative but to vote for right-wing parties. And sometimes those right-wing parties are significantly more on the right than what the people who are voting for them would actually support. But they're out of touch with the centre-left parties that they have been voting for. So I think that's what you're saying. I don't think it's a drift towards fascism.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well,
What's your take, Steve?
yeah, I think that I don't want to close out on my July 4th message, but I think that we are seeing a shift from the center centrist parties and more liberal parties toward more conservatism all around the world, and I don't know whether it is countries are trying to just keep themselves strong. So I think there's an anti-immigrant push. You look at U.S., other countries. I think that. We are seeing also the rise of protectionism. People say, well, I want to make the company jobs here in my own country. And that could, very similar to what Rick is saying, kind of a pre-World War II kind of mentality of the world, more of an isolationist kind of thing. I just want to take care of myself. And so I think it is a trend we're seeing, and we'll see what happens. I think if Macron loses to Le Pen in France, although they are saying that Britain could, like Shaquille was saying, the Tories could lose, and I think if Joe Biden were not the nominee and it was a stronger Democrat, I think the Democrats could have a good case. But the more and more calls, ask for his resignation, he's now hovering on 40%. I think it's going to take a miracle for him to win. But the most damaging effect is the down effect ballot. Now I'm actually really concerned that I'm a Democrat and a huge Josh Stein supporter, but I think Josh Stein could lose in North Carolina, because I think if Trump wins, by 7-8 points, Stein could lose this thing in the tides. And you can't tell me that.
Steve, that's why I keep saying I think at this point, I don't really think there's much that Democrats can do. I mean, he's so far behind after that debate, I think it's almost impossible for him to come back. But the presidency isn't the only thing that's in play. And I really think that Democrats need to do a couple of things. One, they need to spend a lot of time and energy and effort advocating for why they should have a lead and have control of the House, and have a lead and have control of the Senate. That's where I think, because that's the only way they can counter some of Donald Trump's more eccentric orders. The other thing is that if they want to have any shot at all of winning the election, winning the presidency, I think that they have to decide right now, are you going to back Biden, he's your candidate, or are you going to replace him? Because you've got so many mixed messages coming out. You've got, so many high-profile Democrats saying, oh, no, it's fine, we're backing him, and then others saying, oh, no, maybe he should be replaced. that doesn't look like a unified message. And Democrats have got to sort that out, because the longer that goes on, the more likely people are going to just say, that's it, I'm not voting for them.
So we still have 4 months to go, and this is the earliest we've had candidates in place in I don't know, forever. So yeah, it looks terrible because it's been going on for like, this is day 8 maybe of it, but we still have plenty of time. Biden's doing a live interview with Stephanopoulos on Friday, which, you know, if he does okay, does that salvage him a little bit? And you know, if he screws that up, then yeah, he's definitely screwed. But can we give it 2 more days?
I don't think it's going to make a difference, Rick, in my opinion. I don't think it will, because it's pre-scripted, is what people will say if he does well. And if he doesn't do well, it's terrible. So it's a lose-lose situation for him, no matter what he does.
Jutovi?
I was just going to state that, yes, I know they put up at the bottom, it's a choice between lesser of 2 evils. It's not really a choice between lesser of 2 evils. One is definitely evil. One is just asleep. And the problem is when they tried to put out the excuse that, oh, well, it wasn't just that he had a cold and he was sick, he was also asleep. That still fits into the same narrative that is being pushed out there, that he is unqualified because of his age, and his age is the one that's causing him problems. So I think he still has a path forward. I would not put him forward. I would have him roll out another candidate, him coming into the interview, rolling out the candidate then and saying, okay, well, we're going to have an open this. We're going to open it up at the convention and then try and decide from there and move forward. Because honestly, again, right now.
Is there somebody that you'd prefer to say? Is it someone that you think would be the best?
That's what I was getting to. Honestly, they did a poll already, and Kamala Harris basically polls right beside Donald Trump right now. And that is on a poll where it is not a set person. It's just the idea of. So I think, again, this is what I told, this is what Kim and I were talking about last night during the politics show. Right now, the women are going to carry the date or this vote. It is the women's vote this year because of what Donald Trump did and how he campaigned about how he was so happy about overturning Roe v. Wade.
Who would you run as Kamala's running mate? If you put her there, who would you choose as her running mate?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. I would have him roll out Kamala Harris, because right now Kamala Harris is polling right beside Donald Trump. If Kamala Harris doesn't accept it, then I'd push out either Gretchen Whitmer next and then go to Gavin Newsom, because again, right now the women's vote is the most important vote of this election.
Sorry, if Kamala does take it, who would you want as her VP? We've only got a couple minutes left. Who would you want as her VP?
I've got an answer for that. I'd flip the ticket. If I had a magic wand, I'd make it Harris Biden. And that solves the perceived deficiencies of each. If Biden can only be alert like 6-8 hours a day, make him VP. You still have his input. Make Harris the presidential candidate. They've been an effective team, you know, and maybe
that's a really interesting way of doing it, Rick. I've never actually heard of. Nobody's ever suggested that. That would be that I've heard of. That'd be interesting.
We discussed that last night. So yeah,
but
it's a
the
good
VP
idea.
pick does not.
But so would you guys say on the Republican side that if Trump is as polarizing, that he should pick instead of it being Trump somebody, that it should be somebody Trump on the Republican side, so that Trump's eccentricities are a little bit more contained?
I think he should just get rid of Trump altogether. He's a
convict. Yeah, but that's not what I'm asking you, though. I know you guys don't like Trump. That's not what I'm asking you guys.
No,
if you guys suggesting...
It's not that I don't like him. He's a convict.
Okay, all right. So we can't. Okay, so as usual, we can't have any two-way conversation.
I would actually do. If I was a Trump supporter, and y'all know I'm not, I would do Trump Nikki Haley, because I think Nikki Haley would actually be one that could bring the women's vote to increase not just his base, but to get some other people as well. So I would do Trump.
But that's what he should do, but he often doesn't do what he should.
Well, I still like my idea, because it's not my country, and I think it'd be interesting to watch that if the Democrats bypass Kamala Harris, then Donald Trump should ask Kamala Harris to be his running mate. So you've got a Trump-Harris ticket. just to
There
make
you
it fun and
go.
exciting for the
Maybe
rest of
we
us to
can
watch.
get new candidates to run for this country and make a future for our
Yeah,
children. Mark, you want to wrap? We'll talk to you guys
Yeah,
later.
we can get ready to
Bye.
wrap it. Like I said, the only thing I was going to mention, and we can get to it on tomorrow or on the 5th and everything, but it'll be interesting to see how things play out with the now non-parole of Leonard Peltier, who was a Native American activist who was accused and convicted of killing an FBI agent. But there are other folks that have been in prison for a number of years and have gotten out, and even after they were found guilty. I'm thinking about like the folks that were found guilty even in the Emmett Till case and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this all goes on and whether parole efforts are given, as the man has been serving for 50 years as that case took place back in the mid 70s and everything along those lines. So, and he's not the only one. There's also the gentleman that was with Move that is still in prison and has faced some health consequences as well. So it'll be interesting. We can talk about whether political prisoners exist in the United States or don't exist in the United States and whether they are talked about enough. But on that note, we're getting ready to get on out of here, and we'll have some of these conversations on tomorrow as well.